Hi, thanks for joining us. This is Colorado Cinema Spotlight, and this month our guest is Sarah Lotfi. It's nice to have you join us, Sarah.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Sarah does some wonderful work with historical film pieces, some war films. We've got a wonderful piece to show the audience, The Last Bogatyr.
Yes.
But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit just about yourself. Give us a little bit of information about your background, how you got into filmmaking, anything else that you'd like to tell us?
All right. Well, I feel like I'm from the Springs because I've grown up here and spent most of my life here. And actually, one of my first workshops was actually in the studio back in high school. And so it's nice to come here and to be here with you and to kind of come full circle. I've always been interested in film because I always have been interested in creating that illusion that just captures people so much. So I started making little handy cam movies back in middle school and high school. Mm-hmm. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I had started making epic productions in a little very high school way, but and participating in the film festival that was going on there at my high school. And I knew that when I was going to college, and I'm still in college right now, that I would want to pursue a career that way. And so I'm at the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs, and I'm double majoring there in like 2 different avenues of film stuff. So I'm a visual and performing arts major with an emphasis in film studies, learning like the background and different national cinemas of film, and then I'm also a communication major where I'll have a degree in digital filmmaking by the time I'm graduated. Well, that'll be in May.
That's great. It's nice to have someone so local here. But it's not to underestimate your work. I mean, for someone who's still a student, this is just a remarkable film. And we're going to want to get into it pretty quickly here. So tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea. First of all, where does the title come from, The Last Bogatyr?
Bogatyr is the Russian word for a knight or an epic hero. I had just finished my short film Two to Rose in 2008, and I was looking to top that because it's not enough for me to do something good and be satisfied. You have to go on and do something different and challenge yourself, otherwise you'll never grow. So it was over Christmas, and I was listening to like different Russian folk music, and I was thinking, I wonder if I could do a folk story set in World War II. And so for a long time I was trying to pursue adapting a folk story into a World War II setting, and I ended up abandoning that. And World War II, The Last Bogatyr ended up becoming this piece that's more about the ideology at the time. So the 3 central characters in the film are 3 different worldviews. And so I think of The Last Bogatyr not so much as like this war picture. It is, but it's more of a piece that is actually about what people believed, and the war is just a backdrop and a setting for that.
Great. What kind of awards, screenings, festivals?
It's shown at 10, I think.
Wow.
I think now 12. It keeps getting invited places. So it's been at 12 festivals now around the world, from Los Angeles to here locally to Wales and Ireland. Wow. And Canada. So it's had a good showing, and it ended up being a national finalist in the 37th Student Academy Awards. It's won other awards, but that's the one that seems to just have the most weight.
Yeah, that's really good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's quite an honor.
Yeah,
really
we were one of the top 10 in the narrative competition. So we were right alongside God of Love, which is that short film that you've probably heard of, that's screened locally several times too. So I'm happy it went that far.
Yeah, well, you obviously have a very unique style. Are there any filmmakers that kind of influenced you a lot?
Oh, it's interesting you say that, because I don't really go out and pursue one filmmaker and I will be like them, because I want to have my own voice. But people have looked at Bogatyr and have been like, I see Tarkovsky in that. And I'm like, that's interesting, because I've only seen one Tarkovsky film, and that was after that one was made. But I like Joe Wright, what he's done recently with Hannah and with Atonement. And I appreciate what Catherine Bigelow's done, and I mean, if anything, I want to be like her, what she does as a woman, where she makes films outside what's expected for women to make. I think a lot of times we get stereotyped for making just the romantic comedies or the drama pieces, but to actually step out and try and do a war film or to do, you know, films without female characters, you know, I think that's a great challenge for any woman to do, and not to just be defined by society.
Okay, great, great. Just before we go to the film, is there anything in particular that you'd like the audience to watch for? A moment you're proud of? Something that works well? Does it just stand on its own?
I think people can see it for what it is, for sure. I love match cuts. That's my guilty pleasure.
Match cuts?
Yeah, where you have you cut like jumping from either like a sound or like an object and jumping here and there. So at the end of the film, that's kind of like my signature do jump cuts. For Bogatyr also, I really like the war scene. I would have loved to have done more of those, but the one segment we do have in the film is kind of its crowning glory.
yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, let's take a look at the film, because we're going to want to talk a lot about it. All right, here's a clip from the film by Sarah Lotfi, The Last Bogatyr.
В рази его, и добежат от лица его ненавидящие его. Яко исчезает дымка исчезнут, яко тает водка с лица огня, так да погибнут реки от лица любящих Бога, и именующихся крестным знаменем, везде глаголющих, радуйся, пречестный, животворящий крестный Господь, догоняйте силы на святых Господь, животворящего, поотшедшего и возбравшего силу дьяволем и даровавшего нам великое звучание, знание всякого солдата, о пречестный, животворящий крестный Господень, помоганица святую Госпожа, Деву Богородицу, со всеми святыми вовеки. Аминь.
That was The Last Bogatyr by Sarah Lotfi. Beautiful, beautiful film. Boy, you did a great job with that. I can see why it's so popular. Okay, now, how did you begin to pull all this together? Did you have the story first? Did you do a storyboard?
I did do storyboards. I did have a story, too, and the script kind of got, like, more and more was added to it as the film got along to make it more fluidous. It was shot all around Colorado, from Greeley to Monument to downtown Colorado Springs. It was just like around Colorado. So it's very much a native film, which I'm happy to say. I had the help of World War II reenactors, and like their participation, both like as being like the soldiers in the film and also as consultants with the script and the story. I mean, I think it made a huge difference for me. And
that one war scene is just incredible.
Thank you.
And the soldier dying is amazing. It's just amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Did they do most of that, or was that a joint effort?
Well, the lead actor is Benjamin Bonenfant, and he's kind of like a local star in a way. He's a student like myself at UCCS, and he's worked in many of the TheaterWorks productions and Boulder Theater Company, and so that's him throughout the pieces. He's not a reenactor. He had to learn a lot from them, and I think he would tell you if he was here that it was quite an experience being able to talk to people who do this as a passion hobby, and like finding out little minute details about what a soldier's life would be like. And so, I mean, I think that for the actors as well was just a great experience. A great opportunity.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Well, then that opening scene is remarkable in the church. How did you go about pulling all that together?
Well, see, and again, that's what we were really lucky with that film, too, is we had the blessing of that local Russian Orthodox church, which is here in town. I had gone there with an art class once, and I had fallen in love with the interior, and I'm like, I should write a film for this location. And and I had gone in as research when I was writing Bogatyr, and I ended up meeting a couple, a woman who was from Russia and her husband who was a local cinematographer here. And so we had the film connection and their support. And so Ira, who's that wife, she's the voice of Katya in the film, and so she's actually chanting for us like this Russian prayer.
Beautiful.
And I had her help too with the cultural thing. I think it's really important when you try and take on a piece from a different country that you try and find people who are from there so you get the culture right. Because, I mean, I would hate to be labeled as the blasphemous American going around. But, I mean, my own background is multicultural, too. My father's Iranian, my mother's half Chinese. So I kind of look for projects that, you know, explore a different perspective than you would see in America. And
and being very true to the culture. And that certainly comes out in this film.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, let's talk briefly about the costuming. I mean, it's a period piece, obviously, and there are a few, like inside the church, but for the most part it's shot out of doors, so it really is the costuming that gives it that feel of being a period piece. And it's done very, very well. What past do you have in costuming?
Well, I didn't really do much of that in Bogatyr. I was just lucky enough to work with borrowing a lot of uniforms and costuming from the theater department. In my other work, Tudor Rose, and in my new piece, Waking Eyes, you see more of the costumes that I've made and pulled together for a film. I just love dressing up. So for me, costumes come along with that, and dressing other people and putting them in front of a camera can sometimes be just as much fun as doing it yourself.
Do you find it helps them, or not?
I really do think it does, because I mean, when you put on an elaborate costume that's like authentic. So for a woman, if she's putting on a corset, you know, if a guy, if he's taking on, you know, a rifle and boots, you know, you have a certain, I think, weight, and I think it changes your body in a certain way. You have to kind of, and then you have real props, so you're starting to think about, this isn't more of like pretend, this is a real role, this is a character. So I really feel like it does something.
Well, a big part of the reenactors is having the right uniforms and having the right things, so it kind of carries over.
And the details are meticulous. You put the wrong shoulder boards, it's wrong.
People will notice. People will notice.
People will know.
Well, then the other real quality of this film that just stands out is the fact that there's no dialogue, basically, and the music that goes throughout. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did that come about?
Well, it's kind of my signature as a filmmaker to do films that are primarily silent. For one, logistically, it's much easier to shoot when you're not having to deal with mics all the time. But I feel like what you're encouraged to do, what I've been encouraged to do, is like if you can tell it with minimal dialogue, if you can make the visual speak for itself, then in some ways, you know, your audience is going to have a much more engaging experience with your piece. And I would say too that with the Last Bogatyr, it's much more of a poetic piece. Like it's an exploration into cinema as visual poetry, yeah. And so the images and the characters in the films are so much larger than life because they're representing like ideas, and in that sense too, I think that if I had dialogue, it would have taken a little bit of the magic away for that piece.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is this quality to the film, yeah, because it's just the musical background. Mm-hmm. How did you come up with that music? It just seems so appropriate.
Well, I was lucky to work with a composer for part of it. So the main theme song is done by a composer out of Ireland. Actually, I've never met her. She, I had licensed some of her work for an earlier piece of mine, Tudor Rose, and she had been like so happy with that film. She was like, well, when you do another one, I'd love to write you original music. And so we worked, and she wrote it for us like in a time span of 2 weeks. It was amazing that she came out with the theme, and it's so haunting and ethnic too. We worked a while to make it feel very Eastern European. But the other segments, the segments from the Russian Orthodox Church, we worked with libraries trying to find the correct holy music for a wedding versus a funeral, and they're very, very precise in the Russian Orthodox Church. So we had to get that right as well. But I think it, yeah, the mix between ethnic music and traditional music, I think, gives the film another type of level.
Works very well in this film. Works very well in this film, and I'm sure it will in your others as well. And that kind of segues into the next film. I kind of hate to leave this one because there's so much to say about it. And I know it's a favorite of yours too, but at the same time you have other projects. Yeah. So let's talk about the next film that we're going to show a clip from.
Okay.
This one you finished not long ago,
yes,
right?
I just finished it like 2 months ago.
Okay.
This summer.
Great. It's called Waking
Eyes.
Waking Eyes, right.
And that one comes from a poem by Lewis Carroll. So it's again kind of drawn from literature and classic culture, but there's a segment of the poem that we use from Life is But a Dream that Lewis Carroll wrote, where that line we use throughout the film, and it's both sets it up and then Alice Never Seen by Waking Eyes. Yeah. And so Waking Eyes is the film, and I feel like Waking Eyes is really a film about perception. And so like a lot of times within it we'll focus on eyes, like we'll get a lot of extreme close-ups of eyes just to kind of emphasize like what you would see versus like what you would see in your mind versus what you would see in the real world. And it's actually a contemporary fantasy. It's not technically a period piece.
Yeah, right.
We journey into different time periods, but there's something not quite right about each one of them. There's always this man in contemporary clothes, like there. But it's really about an older woman and looking back at her life and like as she relates to different epic fantasies in a way, and seeing herself as a younger woman in like her idealized form. So the main character is played by 2 different actresses. It's played by Ariel Beatty most of the film, and then it's played by Leah Chandler Mills, which many people will know here in the Springs for her work with Theater Works and the University of Colorado Springs.
Right. It was a great opportunity for you to really break through the walls and try a lot of different things.
Yeah, it was very, very fun. Like initially, the concept for that piece came from that I had a bunch of dresses from a fashion show I had tried to do. I did a fashion show in 2008 with a bunch of period costumes in white. So these are sitting in my closet. And we're like, how can we do a film with white dresses? And I'm like, we should go to the gallery. We should go to the university gallery and have white dresses on a white space and make it very, very, very cerebral, and then we kind of drafted a story around that visual.
It holds together amazingly well, considering it pieced together like that from various directions.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look at a clip from it, okay? So the audience is in on what we're talking about, all right?
No problem.
Thanks. Okay, let's look at this clip from a film by Sarah Lotfi called Waking Eyes.
Hello? Yeah, I'm with her. I'm looking at her right now. Wait, something's happening. What's wrong? Is she okay?
And that was a clip from Waking Eyes by our guest, Sarah Lotfi. Really, another interesting film. I hope the audience gets a chance to see the whole thing at some point and soon, because it really is remarkable what you've done with that.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah.
Maybe filming a segment of it or something
Sure.
like
Like the segment you saw was shot here in Manatee Springs at Briarhurst Manor. And we were working with World War II reenactors again for that piece, but we were working with the ones who do the American impression. And with Waking Eyes, it's like so many of the scenes are meant to be kind of metaphors for her life and different periods that she's gone through. And so in that piece, it's like she's at this grand English manor, the only woman in a ball gown, and she's flitting down the stairs, and nobody really pays any attention to her. It's like she does not belong in this classy party. And I think of that too, like in my backstory for the character, that's my mental backstory for the character. It's like when she was young, she would have been growing up, like she would have been a younger woman in like the 1960s and 70s, right after the women's movement. And although that scene in the film is set in World War II, you know, she's a woman that's out of place, and in her life, she's a woman out of place in society. And one of my favorite segments is actually in that scene where you see Michael Lee playing the mysterious young man, and he's in contemporary clothes on a cell phone behind these soldiers. And it's great because he disappears within that dolly move. Like, our cinematographer worked really hard with me to make that happen, so he would be replaced by another person by the time you get around. And I love the way that you hear his lines, so you hear his voice, and then the rest of the conversation that he's having on the phone is dispersed through different characters. And so it's a very disorienting effect as she's beginning to feel iller and iller, and then just being encroached by people who are now aware of her and speaking with the same voice. It was very fun and very challenging to shoot that, but it's one of my favorite pieces in the film.
You really get that feeling as you go through the scene, because you're seeing these costumes and this set, and that gives you one impression, but then it kind of morphs as you're going through the scene with these weird things happening, and her getting more sick as she goes through.
Well, like, our goal when we were doing these fantasy scenes was to like set it up so you think, oh, it's real, this is actually history, she's time traveling, whatever. But then by the end of that scene, to make it collapse in on itself. And so to kind of prove that it's not really a period piece at all, and to just make you question.
Really, really interesting. So where exactly is this film at now? When will it be available for people to see?
It'll probably be available on IMDb in about a year, because right now it is completed, but I'm in the process of submitting it to festivals, so it's going to be a long time before we have a screening schedule, and so it's just best to check back to the website. It's wakingeyesmovie.com, and so people can follow it there or on its Facebook page. It's a lot of work to maintain, like marketing a film these days.
Well, you're doing a lot of it yourself, too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so we've seen these two great films and two to Rose in your past. So what else have you done and are you doing coming up?
Well, I mean, I do all these as a student filmmaker, but I do have my own production company, White Cloud Films, which is fun running, to say the least. I've tried to work a lot locally as much as I can. Like I've AD'd a lot on professional sets.
Assistant director?
Yes, I love that. I love doing the AD work. So I've worked with Pete Sherman locally on much of his work, on music videos to like his new feature, Creep, that he's working on right now. But then last summer I actually got a national TV internship through the Emmy Foundation, which was great because I needed it for school. I needed this internship. But it was greater still to actually go out to Los Angeles for 2 months and work on the set of Cinema Verite. So I was the intern for HBO Films production, which was cool. I mean, it was a lot tedious, and I really didn't get to do much than just observe and wear a walkie and call echo rolls and cuts. It's doing the lockups, as they call it out there on set. But it was a neat experience, and I think it's cool to say that I did that here, and I'm from Colorado. Because out there, everyone just kept assuming, oh, you're from Boulder. I'm like, no, I'm from Colorado Springs.
Great. Well, thanks for representing Colorado. I'm sure they were really impressed.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
What about film projects? What's coming up after this one?
Oh, well, I'm going back to World War II again. I'm graduating in May, and so my next film, Mention, is going to be exploring the German perspective in the last days of the war, basically the last week of the war, from May 1st to May 8th, from the Czechoslovakian border into Austria. And it's kind of a really exciting piece because I've wanted to do it for a long time. I've wanted to do it since Bogatyr was done, and for whatever reason, it seems like now is the best time to pursue that. I'm looking to work with a lot of local professionals on the crew, and actually I'm really trying to get a budget to do that. With Bogatyr, we were very lucky to have people do all this stuff for me.
It helps.
And I mean, I'm sure that we'll get that again, but it's going to take a lot more effort because I want to take it to the next level. So I want to have a budget to do more pyrotechnics this time. We worked with Angel Light Pyrotechnics for the Last Bogatyr, and they're very interested in doing it again. But I want more explosions. I want strafing. Great. It's going to cost us more this time. And when you do get people to work for you on your sets, it's much better to feed them. And so we want to feed people.
What about dialogue? Will there be dialogue?
Yes, there will be dialogue. What Mention is really unique is because it deals with a disabled character, and it deals with Germans kind of reconciling with their past, for what went on with that population in society. But it will have dialogue. We're looking actually to use a bunch of the actual broadcasted speeches in the film too. So we're looking up actual broadcasts and in the process of trying to hunt down the files for that. So it'll have a sense of authenticity if the Germans are in headquarters and listening to the broadcast about the announcement of the Führer's death. I think it'll just give it a whole new level of realism. But it won't be talking constantly. So I can't do films like that.
No, and you shouldn't, because the music, some of the other stuff you've done is so effective that you don't want to give that up entirely.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like a great project. How can people track the progress and other things you're doing?
Well, Mention has a website of its own in the early stages, trying to create awareness for it and get people excited early. You can go to mentionthemovie.com. mention.com, and mention is spelled MENSHEN because it's the German word for human beings, because it's a film all about humanity. But I have many sites, but I guess the easiest way to find out more about my work is to go to my official website, which is www.sarahrlotfi.net. So it's just my name spelled out, and it's .net, not .com. But there's links to my Facebook pages up there, and my Twitter account, and my LinkedIn account, so you can track with me there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for joining us, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. It's been great.
And thank you. This is Colorado Cinema Spotlight. We'd appreciate your comments or suggestions. You can reach us through Facebook, Colorado Cinema Spotlight on Facebook. Also, if you're a Colorado filmmaker or if you have any work that you'd like to submit and be interviewed, you can reach us through the link below. Thank you for joining us.